Welcome to this sample audio clip, which comes from the conversation series featuring multi-hull pioneer Jim Brown. This segment comes from an interview that Jim conducted with sailor and designer John Marples. To find out more about this historic, multi-hull oriented audio series, please visit us at www.outrigmedia.com.
John, hey, it's Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Here we are on the phone with a slightly crackly connection from my end, but I think we can continue because last time I spoke with Joe Farinaccio, we had quite a discussion about what I consider to be the pros and cons between catamaran and trimaran. It's a thing I've been calling for a long time, cat crazy, and I think I got it from you.
Yep, very possibly. I've been saying that for a couple of decades already.
And then you and I have had a couple of private conversations recently that relate to much more technically than I got into it with Joe is the dynamics of multi-hulls from the standpoint of an engineer, which you are and I'm not. Both of us are sailors, and I'm sure we'll have something to say about the sailing as we get down to the end of this. But let's go into the dynamics by first of all trying to define or to separate the three types of multi-hull configurations, the three basic multi-hulls that were given to us by the ancient people of the Pacific, going back maybe 3,000 years ago. And today we call them what?
Well, the first one is the proa, and that's a two-way boat that goes either way with the ama to windward. And then there's the catamaran, and then there's the trimaran, which are well understood. And there's another one in there, the single outrigger, which only goes one way, that carries its outrigger either to leeward or to weather, depending on which way it's going. That's a little less understood and probably weird enough that probably doesn't deserve any discussion at this point.
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of them around, particularly the old Malibu outriggers. No, yeah, that's right. They were so-called tacking proas, really a single outrigger configuration. As I understand it, proa refers only to a boat that shunts, that sails either with a bow at both ends, and it can go either way. And then this tacking proa thing is something that I hadn't really separated out as a separate configuration, but I see what you mean. It is.
Yeah, it's sort of halfway between the proa and the cat, and it has some advantages and some disadvantages, just like the proa. But the main discussion, I think, that the public has these days is about catamarans and trimarans, because those are the two really strongly identifiable hull forms that we're seeing a lot of now.
Sure are. Yeah, I was talking to Chris White and figured that probably in the last Annapolis boat show there must have been at least 25% of the boats exhibited were multi-hulls.
Yeah, and most of those in the larger sizes were cats, and in the smaller sizes, they might be evenly distributed between cats and tris. What do you think?
Yeah, about even. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the trimarans have been very successful in small boats. In fact, I've often said that I think the trimaran configuration is far better than the catamaran, up to a threshold size, and that threshold is, I think, somewhere in the mid-40s to 50 feet sort of range, after which the catamaran shows some significant advantages.
Well, I think 50 feet for a catamaran is good, but 60 is better, in my opinion.
Sure.
Because the size of the human being doesn't change, but the boat gets bigger, and so catamarans can avoid that top hamper, as we call it, the high superstructures, as Joe Hudson calls it, the school bus effect.
Yeah, and that was evident on some of the earlier Troy boats, and in particular, I thought, Sea Smoke, which was a 58-foot early Troy catamaran, had a particularly tall cabin on it because it was built for Jim Arness, and he was something like, 6'7" or something like that tall, and so it had a particularly high cabin, and it showed that even at 58 feet, that school bus effect was still apparent if it was taken to extreme.
John, I guess I'd better insert here something I forgot to mention as we opened this discussion. I just heard that Rudy Choi died last night.
Oh, that's a shame.
Here's to old Woody and Rudy. The two of them were real pioneers in the multi-hull game. And I'm afraid that Rudy was really out of it, not recognizing anyone or anything for the past several years. So in a way, it's a great relief to his son Barry. But boy, that really is the end of a very vital chapter in multi-hull history.
Yeah, he certainly did lay the groundwork for a lot of the modern catamaran design, and there's still a lot of his boats around. They're going to live on for a long time. Yeah.
Well, let's mark it as September 13th, 2011. The Rudy Choi story is over, but in my view, he he sails on.
Yeah.
All of the multi-hulls afloat now and forever.
Yeah.
He really was a pioneer.
Well, okay. Let's talk about the differences between cats and tris. And the thing that strikes me most, even in those old boats of Rudy's, when you put a trimaran and a catamaran side by side in the harbor, the thing that you notice first, if it's a boat of significant size, is that the catamaran always seems a lot bigger, and that is really true of any of the French cats or the South African cats that are being built today.
Right, yeah, they are. They're monster boats.
Yeah, and I think that leads us to a lot of implications in the sailing dynamics, because you can see intuitively that the center of gravity of those larger catamarans is much higher up than the center of gravity of the trimaran of the same size. Even if it's a clunky old piver, the clunky old pivers even look pretty low and sleek compared to some of these newer boats.
Well, I guess the reason is that in the trimaran you can stand in the middle, down deep with your feet even below the waterline, whereas in the catamaran where you stand, your feet are already well above the waterline, and the house top has to express that. But the other thing I notice when you see a cat and a tri of equal length side by side, at least if they're modern versions, is that the trimaran is wider. Not only is the catamaran higher, bigger, but the trimaran is wider, and that also speaks to stability.
Yeah, it certainly does. The thing that is most striking to me in the difference between the two is that the catamaran, if it's got accommodations down in the hulls, those accommodations are within just a few feet of where the boat is tied up at the dock, and they need standing headroom. And because the hulls are shallow to begin with, it means that the topsides have to be quite tall in order to accommodate people down below standing, within an arm's reach of the dock. Whereas,
that explains the additional shear height.
Thanks for listening. For more like this, or to obtain the complete audio conversation, come visit us on the web at www.outrigmedia.com.